Okay. So we were discussing now the Elizabethan society, focusing on William Shakespeare, and we have just discussed how the Elizabethan theatre is, the evolution of theatre, like starting from the traveling actors to acting troops to temporary theaters to permanent theater, all these things, and the structure of theater and the different forms that we had during that time: tragedy, comedy, commedia dell'arte, all these things we discussed. Till then, we discussed in the last class, I guess, and today we can start with Shakespeare, okay, exclusively Shakespeare's life and his works and all of this. We know that Shakespeare has written almost 37 plays and 154 sonnets, some long poems. So his literary career is like too huge. So in this particular session, I'm planning to, like, not only this session, definitely Shakespeare will, go for more than one session. But I'm planning to give a gist of his major plays, and also we'll go through the major literary representations that Shakespeare has made, and some important facts and things related to his personal as well as literary career. Okay, yeah. So as you can see, as you can see here, William Shakespeare's lifespan extends from 1564 to 1660, okay, 1616. And he was the son of John and Mary Arden. Okay, Shakespeare is the son of John and Mary Arden. Shakespeare in a small town, that is Stratford upon Avon. Okay, Stratford upon Avon. Actually, this name we usually know, the Stratford upon Avon, we know, but I do still remember one of the exams that I attended. It was a PhD entrance or something like that, some entrance examination of a reputed university, and the question was, which is the birthplace of Shakespeare? And the students will be thinking like, okay, it's a very easy question, but the options are like Stratford upon Avon, Stratford at Avon, Stratford in Avon. Okay, so if we think in that way, it will be like really confusing, and those people who are familiar with this place itself, get confused. So that is something very important, like in terms of this competitive examinations, this kinds of minute details are very important. So this is Stratford upon Avon, and it's like 100 miles northwest of London. It was not properly in London, and later, to pursue his career, he came to London. Okay, so his father, John, he belonged to a farming family near Stratford, and you can see the birth. His birth is celebrated on 23rd April 1564. Then, like his son, like Shakespeare, John had also left his family and moved to a larger commercial center, that is Stratford. Actually, John, that is the father of Shakespeare, he himself was not, a native of the Stratford place. He also, in search of prosperity, in search of pursuing his passions or whatever it is, he came to this place. And again, his son, Shakespeare, again, he was in search of his career and all those things, and he went to London later. And then this father, he worked as a leather worker, a glover, and soon became a leading merchant. Okay, so it was like almost his family. And birthday is celebrated on 23rd April 1564. And at the age of 4 or 5, Shakespeare would have learned to read and write in English. Actually, we are not so clear or very, strong about the details of his education career and all, because people usually say he's an uneducated person, and that is one of the reasons why people reject the authenticity of Shakespeare as a single person. Some people say it is someone else, like Christopher Marlowe, or so many other names are there for Shakespeare's works. And also some people say like Shakespeare is not a single person, it's group of people who wrote with similar interests and all. And some people say like Shakespeare is a woman. So many things are there. That is just because we don't have so much of informations regarding his personal life. But again, we have a common notion that at the age of 4 or 5, of course, Shakespeare is not completely illiterate, but he didn't acquire higher education. That is what the thing. So Shakespeare would have learned to read and write in English at the age of 4 or 5. And again, at the age of 7, he would have started learning a heavily classical curriculum at the local grammar school, which involved like memorizing Latin composition, mythology, translation of the texts, including history, rhetorics and all those things, and translations of those works like Terence and Plautus, all those people, the comedians, the Roman comedians, then learning some Greek from the New Testament. So bits and pieces, he must have read all these things. Otherwise, it is not possible for a person to write these kinds of dramas, because when you go through the works of Shakespeare, it is very evident that he has some knowledge of these particular things, but at the same time he is not a university graduate, or who has acquired this higher education properly. Then he did not go to universities because his father seems to have fallen on hard times by then due to unknown reasons. So he got this basic education, but he couldn't pursue his higher education, maybe due to his father's, hard times or bad times during that time. So it goes like that. Okay. In 1582, at the age of 18, he married Anne Hathaway. Anne Hathaway is a woman who is 8 years senior to Shakespeare. Hope you may be familiar with this fact. That is, Shakespeare's wife is 8 years older than him. Okay, and 3 months pregnant with their first child when they are when they got married. Then their daughter Susanna was born in 1583. Then they got a twins, that is Hamnet and Judith. Actually, Hamnet died later. Okay, he had an immature death, and they came in 1585. See, Hamnet died in 1596. Within like 10 years, or 10 or 11 years old, like Hamnet dies. It's not Hamlet, it is Hamnet. Okay, so Hamnet and Judith are the twins, children of Shakespeare. One is a boy and one is a girl. And before that, another daughter is also there, that is Susanna. Then, yeah, all that about his personal life. Then coming to Shakespeare in London. Of course, we know that Shakespeare has later moved to London in search of enriching his career. So Shakespeare seems to have departed London sometime in the 1580s, departed to London, okay, sometimes in the 1580s. The 7 years from 1585 to 1592 are called the lost years. We don't know exactly what he was doing during that time. There are no records to establish what he was doing during this time, during these years. And in 1592, we have the first clear reference to Shakespeare as an actor or a playwright in London. Okay, that's how again we start to get other informations regarding his life. As it was like olden days, we are getting these kinds of information from the chronicles or the history records, or from the writings of other people, something like that. So from 1592 onwards, we got some clear references regarding the life of Shakespeare. But before that, 85 to 60, 92, the 7 years, almost 7 years, we don't know what he was exactly doing. This is like Green's attack. Actually, this is a person like Robert Greene. I told you by 1592 we have a reference, a clear reference. Actually, this is what the reference is. I don't know whether you're familiar with this reference. When Shakespeare was emerging in his career, first I told you he was an actor. He was an actor, he was a minor actor in the plays, and he acted in some of the plays. And then he started his career as a playwright. So Robert Greene, okay, Robert Greene, Greene, Robert Greene was a person, a contemporary of Shakespeare during that time, and he wrote a book in 1592 that is A Groat's Worth of Wheat. Okay, A Groat's Worth of Wheat, and in this particular work, he makes the famous attack on Shakespeare. And these are the exact words that Greene used in his particular work. First of all, yes, trust them not. For there is an upstart crow beautified with our feathers that with his tiger's heart wrapped in a player's hide. Supposes he is as well able to bombast out a blank verse as the best of you, and being an absolute Jonas factotum is in his own conceit the only shake scene in a country. Okay, so this is what the lines given by Robert Greene, and if you go through the lines very clearly and again, you will get the exact idea. Upstart crow means a crow from the folk tale. During that time, so many orally transmitted stories are there, folk stories are there, and this upstart crow is a term taken from such a folk tale, who sticks the feathers of other beautiful birds to his tail and thinks he himself has become the prettiest. That is what the reference to this upstart crow. Because crow, as we all know, that is not an attractive bird. Crow is not at all an attractive bird. So this upstart crow in the folk tales, what the crow does is like he gets feathers from other beautiful birds. The other beautiful birds are the established writers of that type. That means he is copying something. Okay, he's copying something. That is what the hidden meaning. And he is getting the feathers of other people and putting it in his own tail and pretending that he is the best one or he is the most beautiful one. Okay, so that is it. Upstart crow beautified with our feathers. Our feathers means the established contemporary writers of Shakespeare. Our feathers that with his tiger's heart wrapped in player's hide. Tiger's heart means a tiger from the folktale again who wears sheep's skin and pretends to be a sheep. There is a proverb like that, that the tiger who wears the skin of a sheep and acts as if that is a sheep, not a tiger, and like making others confused, making fool of others. So he is such a person. He's actually a tiger. He's not at all a nice person, and he's wearing the skin of a sheep. And he's just beautified with the feathers of other birds, and then pretending to be like very elegant, because Shakespeare got immediate popularity. During his time itself, he was popular. His fame is not such something posthumous or something like that. So he's kind of what to say, he was very famous during that time. So this person got somewhat jealous of Shakespeare's fame during that time and wrote this kind of a expressed this kind of an idea. Supposes he is as well able to bombast out a blank verse as in the best of you. He's thinking like in blank verse, because during that time people started to write plays in blank verse. So he is thinking like he can bombast everything, bombast out a blank verse as the best of you. He may be the best among the people. He thinks like that. He is telling. Then, and being an absolute Johannes factotum, that is, Johannes factotum means jack of all trades, one who pretends to know everything. Jack of all trades, you know, right? One person who is not expertised in anything, but someone who knows like a small part of everything. If you say like football, that person knows something about football, but not at all into this football. And for cricket, okay, this person knows something about cricket. And for literature, this person knows something about literature. That is what jack of all trade, knows something about everything, but does not know everything about something. Okay, that is what jack of all trade, and that is the expression of Johannes Factotum. And he is just a Johannes Factotum. He is not a really expert or something like that. Okay, in his own country, the only shake scene in a country. Actually, with this shake scene, this is what actually reveals to us that he is referring to Shakespeare. You can see, like in most of the satirical expressions or the criticism, people will not address the person directly with the name, but they will give so many clues. So Shakespeare was new to this particular profession, and by giving all these things, people can identify who about whom Green is speaking. And at the end, you can see like the only shake scene in a country, the one who shakes the scene, the one who thinks like I am everything, I am the superstar of this scene, I am the person who's shaking the scene, something like that. And it has some connections to the name of that person, that is Shakespeare. So we know that okay, this person is indicating this particular person. So this was Green's attack, and this attack is very popular in terms of Shakespeare's life. And this is the first reference that we got after 7 long years that Shakespeare is existing, and he is into this particular profession. He has established his name, and the people are responding to his writings and all. Okay, that is what the thing. So that is what Robert Greene's attack in a Groatsworth of Wit. That is the title of the work, a Groatsworth of Wit, and it was published in 1590. Then Shakespeare and the London Theatre. Okay, in London, the Lord Chamberlain's men, that is Lord Strange's men. These are the different names. That is the Queen's men. Okay, different names. Then these people performed Shakespeare's plays, and also probably the Queen's men too. Queen's men also, uh, these are like different troops. By then I told you, like the people started to create groups, and these types of groups, these groups were so popular during that time. Lord Chamberlain's men as one group performed his plays, and also probably the Queensmen another group. These two troops of people, they started to act the plays of, or perform the plays of Shakespeare. And Shakespeare owned shares in the second Blackfriars Theatre. That is another theatre, an indoor theatre which is built by James Burbage. And later the Globe Theatre also. There also he had his own shares. Because in the last class I told you, like they are like, they wrote plays for commercial purposes, not for aesthetic purpose. Okay, the scenario was totally different. This was the earning for them, and they wrote each and every play to have economic profits. So Shakespeare was writing dramas, and he was selling it, and in turn he was getting the shares in all these theaters. So he was kind of a businessman also. Okay, and in the 1590s, the London theatre scene was unsettled, because actors companies were forming and disbanding themselves under the pressure of this plague was like at the peak during that time. So by 1590s, it was all a downtime for drama. Okay, all London theatres were closed from 1592, the very same year of Green's work published, 1592 to 1594. For these 2 years, due to plague, the theaters were closed. Just like we just had our lockdown, due to plague, the theaters were closed. And let's see what he was doing during the plague years. Okay, actually Shakespeare, non-dramatic poetry, all happened during this time. That is Venus and Adonis, the rape of Lucrece. These are the two long poems of him, and both are dedicated to the Earl of Southampton, probably seeking his patronage. During that time, why these dedications are made by these people? Because if the person is like very much interested to patronize this particular writer, then it will be so beneficial for the writer. So they will be like dedicating to the prestigious people of that time, prestigious nobility of that time. And if they are interested, they will just patronize it. So seeking his patronage, these two works, that is Venus and Adonis, which was like, you can just remember the works in this way. Like, when did the theaters close in England due to plague? 1592 to 1594. Okay, and these are the 2 years, and you can all connect with that, just like this. Like Robert Greene told, from 85 to 92. We don't have any references on Shakespeare. And 92, okay, this Greene is writing this upstart crow thing in a groat's worth of wheat. And in the same year, what is happening? Plague is at its peak and the theaters are closed. And for the next 2 years, the theaters are completely closed, 1594. So during this time, Shakespeare wanted to do something. So no dramas, no scope for dramas during this time. Who will perform? All the theaters are closed. So he wrote some poems seeking the patronage of someone, and during that time Earl of Southampton was so prominent, so he was dedicating these two poems to Earl of Southampton, that is Venus and Adonis, which was published in 1593, and then the rape of Lucrece was in 1594. So you can remember, actually it is very difficult to remember the years, okay, in an order. Without all these background knowledge, if you try to remember the year of Venus and Adonis, 1593, it is very difficult. But if you connect it with the preceding and succeeding happenings, you know, it will be like really easy. That is one of the techniques. So you can learn it in an order. Then he has some minor non-dramatic poems also during that time, which are of course of doubtful of his authorship. We don't know exactly. Venus and Adonis and Rape of the Lucrece, we know that of course here Shakespeare backs the authority of authorship. But this minor dramatic poem, some people say like it is written by Shakespeare, but we are not that sure about the authorship. A lover's complaint, The Phoenix and the Turtle, The Passionate Pilgrim. This is an anthology of 20 poems edited by William Jaggard, that is attributed to William Shakespeare. Okay, these are the minor non-dramatic poems supposed to be written by Shakespeare. Phoenix and the Turtle, we used to say like it is written by Shakespeare, but still there are confusions, there are controversies regarding the authorship. Then comes the sonnets, writings and its publication. Okay, actually circulated in manuscripts before 1598. And in 1598, Francis Mears, okay, who's that? Francis Mears, once again. Yeah, Francis Mears praised Shakespeare's sugared sonnets in his Palladius Tamia. Actually, I haven't mentioned it here. This is someone else, like a contemporary of Shakespeare, that is Francis Mears. Francis Mears, in his famous work Palladius Tamia, Palladis, Palladius Tamia, Tamia. Palladius Tamia is a work by this person. And in this particular work, this Francis Mears is praising Shakespeare's sugared sonnet. And then in 1609, the sonnets were first published in the quarto format by Thomas Thorpe. This is very important information. When did the sonnets get published first? That is 1609. See, here also you can connect it, like though it is published in 1609, in 1598 itself, we have references to his sonnets. So that means Shakespeare has written his sonnets even before 1598. Okay, so most probably along with the long poems that he has written, he might have written some sonnets too. And in the later years, he might have continued with his sonnets writing, because it is in total 154 sonnets. So he might have continued his sonnets writings during that time. And in 1609, it got published. It got first published in quarto format by Thomas Thorpe. Okay, he is the publisher. This is very important. Thomas Thorpe is the person who published the sonnets in 1609 in quarto format. Okay, probably without the author's knowledge. Shakespeare may not be aware of the publication of this sonnets. That we are also not sure whether it is with the permission and the knowledge of Shakespeare or not. We are also not sure. Then you can see, like, later the theater built by James Babbage in 1576. Again, so many, this is something like we missed earlier, like coming to the theaters, which is the first theater. I mentioned it. The theater is the first permanent theater. That the name of the theater itself is the theater. And the theater is built by James Burbage. I think this information is included in one of our previous slides that we have already discussed. And James Burbage in 1576, he built the first theater that is titled the theater. Okay. And then Richard Burbage was also a leading actor, the one who built this theater. He was also a leading actor during that time. Sorry. This is, sorry, James Burbage. See, you will get confused like this. The person who built the theater is James Burbage, but during that time, there was a leading actor whose name is Richard Burbage. The second name is the same, but the first name is different. The actor's name is Richard Burbage, and the person who built the theater's name is, that is in 1576. That is James Burbage. Okay, you should not be confused with the names. And then Shakespeare also played minor roles, and the company's clown was William Kemp. This William Kemp and Richard Burbage, these two people were the famous actors during that time. Okay, William Kemp and Richard Burbage. Then William Kemp and Richard Burbage. Then Shakespeare remained with his company for the rest of the career, and after the accession of King James I in 1603, the company's name was changed to King's Men. Till then it was like Queen's Men, and then it is like King's Men. Then comes the Globe Theatre. One second. Let me just see. No, it is not included. So after this, the theater built by James Burbage in 1576, the prominent theater. Okay, at first it was like Lord Chamberlain's men performed in the theater. The name of the theater itself is the theater, built by James Burbage in 1576, and in 1597, after a dispute with the Puritan landlord and all, these people dismantled this theater. The theater did not last for long. Okay, it ended. And by on the night of 28 December 1597, they totally dismantled this the theater. And finally, the first recorded performance at the Globe was Julius Caesar on 21st September 1599. Actually, these two are some important theaters that you should keep in your mind. There are so many other theaters, but the first theater is the theater by James Burbage, and it was established in 1576. But later, by 1597, it got dismantled with some confusions, or some conflicts between other people, and then they established with the same wood. The wood they used for building theater was it got dismantled, and with the same wood they built the Globe Theater. Okay, the Globe Theatre on the bank side, whereas the theatre was already achieving great success. So this Globe Theatre was established or started to have its performances from 1599. These are some years we randomly get for some examinations. Like these are like just some two important theatres. First is the theatre by James Burbage, and the second is the Globe Theatre, which was established in 1599. And Shakespeare in the 17th century, you can see that is the second half of his lifetime. After 1600, his lifespan extends from 1564 and he dies in 1616. So from 1600 onwards, how was his life? Because in 1603, Queen Elizabeth dies and James I is ascending the throne. That is Jacobean era. The era is changing in the beginning of the 17th century. So what was the status of Shakespeare during that time? That is what we are going to discuss now. So Shakespeare secured a coat of arms which granted him the status of a gentleman during this time. Shakespeare continued to retain his power and positions even during the 17th century, even during the time of James I. And he wrote most of the great tragedies, dark comedies, and romances during the 17th century. That means after 1600. Like his great tragedies might have probably got written at the end of the 16th century, that is 1597, 98, 99, 1600, 1600 and 100 and 200 and 3. So during that time, okay, at the turn of that century, actually he has written the great tragedies, that is Hamlet, Othello, King Lear, and Macbeth. And then his dark comedies and the later romances. Romances are considered to be written in the last part of Shakespeare's career. And he is recognized as a genius in his own time. I told you, no, his popularity is not posthumous, but he was recognized as a genius in his own lifetime. Then Queen Elizabeth, as you know, Queen Elizabeth died in 1603 and King James's accession to the throne happened in the very same year. So, but even after that, Shakespeare had his own. There were some changes, of course, in the ruling system and all, but Shakespeare was like fine. And his retirement is like 1610. Shakespeare retired from the theatre officially. After that, he didn't contribute for the performances. And in 1603, the Globes Theatre burned down. It was built in 1599 and it got burned down in 1613 due to unnecessary reasons, unknown reasons. We don't know exactly what the reason is. And he died on 23rd April 1616 at the age of 52. Okay, and he buried in the Holy Trinity Church in Stratford and left his property to the male heirs of his eldest daughter, Susanna. This is how his final years were. Okay, Holy Trinity Church in Stratford is like a tourist place even now. You can see the death place of Shakespeare and all, and the buried places of Shakespeare and all, even now. So, and you can see a unique biography of Shakespeare by Bill Bryson. Bill Bryson's book, Shakespeare, which is published in 2007, is a wonderful biography of Shakespeare in which it's a brilliantly readable work. Okay, brilliantly readable work examines the centuries of myths, half-truths, and downright lies, examines the glory of Shakespeare's language and brings out the man behind the masterpieces. So this is something like very important and a unique biography. So many people have written the biography of Shakespeare, but this is actually got published in 2007, only very recent work. But still, this is a brilliantly readable work. If you are really interested to know the minute details of Shakespeare and his literary career, then it is like this book will be really helpful. Bill Bryson's book, Shakespeare. The title itself is Shakespeare. Then let's see, sorry. Then let's see the works of Shakespeare. Okay, there are in total 37 plays. Recently, another play, the double falsehood has been added to the canon, but we don't know exactly the authorship. And 37 plays are there. In the earlier folio that we have seen, like 36 plays were included, and the Pericles was not included in that book. But in total, like 37 plays are to his credits and 154 sonnets. 154 sonnets, 2 or 4 long poems. Why it is 2 or 4 long poems, we have already discussed, because the rest of the poems, Venus and Adonis and the Rape of the Lucrece, we are very sure it is of Shakespeare. But the rest of the poems, we are not that sure whether it is exactly written by Shakespeare or not. That is why it is 2 or 4 long poems. Then Shakespeare's authorship has been questioned for some of the works. Actually, the first period we can divide. Actually, Shakespeare's career is divided in many ways by different critics and different scholars. Actually, the first period is an apprenticeship age, like it was not that matured. His plays were not that matured and had so many, limitations and all. That is considered to be the age between 26 to 30. And the second period is like he mastered his art. Okay, he understood that how to write, and he identified the techniques with which he has to write. So such things. And his favorite was romantic comedy during this time, because he has written so many romantic comedies during this time. And the third period is like the problem of evil in the world, because that was the common theme that we can see in his many of the works. And then fourth period is like creates a new drama form, tragic comedy, the dramatic romance. All these kinds of new genres are kind of invented or introduced by Shakespeare during this time, and he has contributed a lot in this particular categories. Actually, these are not exactly the 4 categories according to which we can divide Shakespeare's plays, but according to the nature of his works and the status of his craftsmanship, we can just divide it in this way. Some people divide it like his history plays, tragedies, comedies, romances. Likewise, we can divide, and according to the age in which he has written, in that way also we can divide. So many divisions are possible. So it is not mandatory to stick on to one particular, division or something like that. Then let's see the early comedies that Shakespeare had. Okay, early comedies, because the earlier works that Shakespeare has written are comedies, that too early comedies. And you can see there are differences in the early comedies and the later comedies, because I told you, like after a period of time, he also get to know with so many techniques and advantageous things to improve the quality of his comedies. And these kinds of early comedies and matured comedies are 2 different categories that we can divide into the works of Shakespeare. We can categorize the works of the comedies of Shakespeare into early comedies and matured comedies, and you can see the differences in the form, style, structure, theme, and everything. Considering his early comedies, the plots are less original, okay, because the logical connections with the plot, we cannot, we still have that kinds of movies and all. Plots are kind of less original. We cannot connect it with our logical mindset. Then characters are less finished. Fully finished characters are not there. The character may change. There won't be any consistency in the characters sometimes. So things like that. Then style lacks power. In the case of a drama, the theme as well as the style, both are important. The content as well as the format, both are important. And in this case, see, first of all, we thought like the plots are less original, and the style also, when we consider the style of the early comedies, they are also kind of lacks power. We may miss something in between. We may not find to be a properly structured drama, it to be things like that. Then it is like set in some exotic locations, and emphasis is on the situation rather than the character. Then strong, because if it is a good work, the characterization of the characters should be very strong, very genuine, things like that. But as the characters are less finished, you can see the emphasis is on situations rather than the characters. Then strong heroines and clever servants were still a part of the early comedies, and multiple plots were there. Amorous love and friendship, mistaken identity, disguise, all these were like the common elements of Shakespeare's early comedies. Then women steadfast in love and men are fickle. Okay, those kind of people, like men are sometimes, cheating on the women characters, but the women are having very good nature and a very good or a strong decision or a strong willpower or something like that. Then wit and word play, okay, quibbling, slapstick, all these things are like very much like word play. He plays with the word, that is what this quibbling, slapstick. He with the words, like some words will be arranged in a proper way so that it will give us some kind of entertainment as well as information, so it attracts us when the character speaks that kind of a dialogue, that attracts, that seeks the attention, or that grabs the attention of the audience. So that kind of a technique was employed by Shakespeare. And let us just go through some of his works, some of his early comedies. Like as I told you, I'm not going to go in detail into the all the works of, because it is 37 plays and we cannot discuss all the details of all these 37 plays. What the thing is like, I'll give the important informations regarding his famous plays or the most prominent ones, and you have to just read the summary of what these plays, summaries of these plays, okay, so that it will intensify the knowledge on these particular plays. It is not necessary to read all these things because that is sometimes not possible, provided you are not, if you are not interested, then it is not that possible, but still you can have a very small summary of all these plays. First is like Love's Labour's Lost. It was in 1598. 1598. And this Love's Labour's Lost, it has no major source. Actually, most of Shakespearean, not only Shakespearean works, but most of the works of that time had sources. Sources from sometimes the Greek works or the Roman works, the classical works or the medieval works, or some other works from Germany or other countries or something like that. Because after this Renaissance, the copies of all the places started to spread all over the world. So they had exposure towards the writings of other places also. So for Love's Labour Lost, there are no major sources. It has the elements of comedy of manners. Comedy of manners, are you familiar with the genre comedy of manners, which was so prominent during the restoration period and all? It was like very how the society acts, or the manners of the society will be included in such works, and the elements of comedy of manners can be identified in this particular work, that is Love's Labour's Lost. Then influence of commedia dell'arte, we have discussed, that was also one of the prominent genres of that time. That means body street comedies. Okay, it's not that decent or something like that, but it is to entertain the people. So that kind of an influence is also there in Love's Labour's Lost. And Actually, you can see the themes are like very pretensions, how the pretensions are deflated, and love conquers all. That kind of a concept is brought in this particular drama. Then unrealistic atmosphere of games and festive play. All these are some elements. Actually, at the end of this play, the characters achieve maturity in the real world, and they promise of future happiness. Actually, the basic plot of this play is like, one king is there, and king of Navarre and his three lords. Actually, they have shown celibacy for 3 years. They will not have the company of women or girls for 3 years. Celibacy, complete celibacy for 3 years. They promised, or they vowed it, but they fall in love with the princess of France and her attendant ladies. So all the three of them, they are in, sorry, all the four of them, the king as well as the three lords. So all the four of them are in love with this princess and her attending maids. And how they are managing with that. That is actually the plot, and towards the end, a reconciliation. These characters are getting kind of a maturity and all those things. Then some other characters are also there, and the play ends with the songs of the cuckoo and the owl. Actually, why I included it here is like sometimes you can expect a question or something like that, like which of the Shakespearean play ends with the song of a cuckoo and an owl. So at that time, maybe you can remember it is Love's Labour's Lost. And then the play within a play is also here in Love's Labour's Lost. As you're familiar with Hamlet, there is a play within a play thing. Like Hamlet is like showing another play just to know whether Claudius is the original culprit, or what the ghost said is true or not. For getting the evidence for that, he is like making a play within a play content. The mousetrap scene, we usually say. So likewise, there is a play within a play in Love's Labour's Lost also. That is about the nine worthies. The play within a play is of the nine worthies. And it goes like that. Love's Labour's Lost goes like that. Then comes Two Gentlemen of Verona. You may be familiar with the titles of these works, because these are some important works of Shakespeare, and these come under the early comedy category. Actually, this got performed in 1593. Okay, 1593. Actually, this was the year when we had this closure of the theaters and all. 1592 to 1904, we had this closure, but still, you can see like some private performances and all. Okay, that's why it is like 1593. And there are two sources for this particular work. Earlier, for Love's Labour's Lost, we said like there is no proper source for Love's Labour's Lost. But here are two sources. That is, one is story of Titus and Gysippus from Boccaccio's Decameron. Boccaccio's Decameron is the model for Chaucer's Canterbury Tales. Okay, so it is written in the same way. Decameron is also set in the same way. The people are telling stories. Hope you remember that. So there is a story story of Titus and Gysippus in Decameron by Boccaccio, and that particular story is one of the sources for Two Gentlemen of Verona. And the next one is the Portuguese author George D. Montemayor's. Okay, Montemayor. And this particular person's Spanish work is there. Okay, Spanish work, that is Diana Enamorate. Diana Enamorate is also another source for this particular play, that is Two Gentlemen of Verona. Then you can see the theme of Two Gentlemen of Verona is like friendship disturbed by sexual jealousy. Two people are interested and things like that. And I told you like there are connections, okay, with the earlier works. Then based on two literary tradition, this work is based on two literary tradition, and one is the friendship literature of the Middle Ages. During the Middle Ages, we know that people used to write the courtly romances, the knights, the adventurous things and all. So friendship literature was also during that time. It was not an established genre or something like that, but still during the Middle Ages, you can see so many works in which this close friendship, the intensity or the importance of friendship, something like that are mentioned. So that kind of a friendship literature is actually the elements of friendship literature can be seen in Two Gentlemen of Verona, and at the same time the romantic narrative. Okay, the romantic narrative genre is also the elements of this particular tradition is also visible in this particular work, that is Two Gentlemen of Verona. And then comes the comedy of errors. Okay, the comedy of errors, that is another work, and there is a difference for this particular work, that it conforms to the three unities. Earlier, when we discussed the Elizabethan tragedy or the Shakespearean works, we told that the plays of Shakespeare or the plays during the time of Elizabethan period, they don't conform to the three unities except for the plays of Ben Jonson. Ben Jonson was a strict advocate of, making these three unities and all those things. But apart from Ben Jonson, we cannot see some regular works based on these three unities. But this particular work, the Comedy of Errors, so you can expect a question like, which of the Shakespearean plays are conforming to the three unities? In that case, it is Comedy of Errors, one of the examples. Then the principal source, again, the principal sources, Plautus' Menachemi. Hope you remember Plautus and his Menachemi. Plautus is a Roman comedian, Plautus and Terence, hope you remember. And Plautus's Menachemi was a popular play during that time. It's a comedy, a Roman comedy, and that is translated by William Warner. Okay, and that particular work, the translated work of Menachemi by Plautus, and the translator is William Warner, and that is a source of the Comedy of Errors. It's a short farce. Farce is like, it's based on French, a drama. Okay, stuffing the drama with this kind of elements, comical elements and all. That is what called a farce. So these farcical elements are also there in the Comedy of Errors. And you can see the themes like the essential human condition, the web of political and domestic relationships, situations of women in Elizabethan society. All these are kind of, and in as I mentioned in the features of the earlier comedies, you can see like these are like, whether it is in the form or in the structure or in the form or structure or in the content, you can't expect 100% perfection or something like that. Okay, it varies. It has so many disadvantageous features during the early comedies or in the works of the works belong to the early comedies. Then comes the early tragedies. Early tragedies and his later tragedies, great tragedies, all are kind of different, because you can see all these works are written in the beginning of his career and there were limitations accordingly. And which is the first tragedy of Shakespeare? This is also one of the common questions that we can see in the previous question papers of some competitive examinations. The first tragedy of Shakespeare is Titus Andronicus. Okay, Titus Andronicus is the first tragedy attempted by Shakespeare. This is set in mythical Rome. Mythical Rome is the setting. Mythical Rome, not the exact Rome, but mythical Rome is the setting. And themes of pride, family honor, violent revenge, all these are the major themes of this particular work, Titus Andronicus. And you can see, like, when it comes to violent revenge itself, we can expect that this is kind of a tragedy. Otherwise, it will not be very violent. In case of comedy, though there can be revenges, but it will not be violent. Then extravagant rhetorical reflections are there. That is like he was like developing his structural style and all, and heavy influence of Seneca. Seneca, hope you remember, we have seen the features of Senecan tragedy, the revenge tragedy features and all those things. Seneca was the Roman tragedian, and he showed all these kinds of violences and all, revenge tragedy, the ghost like figure, and kinsman, one of the kinsman will be taking revenge, and this madness, and all these are like the features of revenge tragedy, and it can be connected to the Senecan tragedy also. So the heavy influence of Seneca can be seen in the Titus Andronicus. So Titus Andronicus is popular, or you should remember it in two ways. First is this is the first attempt of tragedy by Shakespeare, and the second one is this is a play which has heavy influence of Seneca. Then comes Romeo and Juliet. One second. Okay. Okay. Sorry for the interruption. And Romeo and Juliet. Let's discuss Romeo and Juliet now. And this belongs to, you may be definitely familiar with the content of Romeo and Juliet and how it is important in the career of Shakespeare. We know all that, and it got performed in 1595, and it belongs to the ancient tradition of tragic romance. Okay, that kind of a tradition was also there. That is what called tragic romance, and this is an ancient tradition, that is tragic romance, and this particular play belongs to that particular category. This is a story of two young star-crossed lovers, whose death unites them. They couldn't unite during their lifetime, so their death uniting them. Then you can see like they are like the story of two lovers belonging to two warring families. The families are the opponents. Okay, they are not at all in good relationships with each other. The Montague family and the Capulet family, they both are in Verona, the two prominent established families of Verona. But at the same time, they were like heavy enemies. Okay, they are not at all interested in the affairs of the other family. So that they are like warring families, and one belongs to the Montague family and the other belongs to the Capulet family. So they were in love, and how it ended up in the death of Romeo and Juliet. Actually, there is a source for this particular play also. If you can, it is better to remember at least one of the sources of the plays, because sources are sometimes important. And the tragical history of Romeo's and Juliet. This was a 1562 work by Arthur Brooke, and it was retold in prose in Palace of Pleasure by William Painter in 1567. Okay, there is already, it's kind of twice removed from the reality. Okay, so the tragical history of Romeo's and Juliet is the first work, that is by Arthur Brooke in 1562. And then the same story was retold in prose by Palace of Pleasure by William Painter in 1567. Then you can see the use of poetic and dramatic structure in this particular play. That means switching between comedy and tragedy to heighten the tension. Because Romeo and Juliet just like full of tension, like what will happen next, what will happen next. So in between you can see some comical elements also. So that is a tradition of this poetic dramatic structure. Okay, so in between you can see like the switching between comedy and tragedy. It is to heighten the tension. And then expansion of minor characters like Mercutio. Then use of subplots to enrich the story. All these are some features of this poetic dramatic structure. And all these are very much visible in Romeo and Juliet. And Romeo and Juliet, of course, hope you know the story. Like the Montague and the Capulets are warring family, and the Capulet actually plans a masked ball. During that time, they conduct this ball parties. Okay, a masked ball party. So they all wear masks and they will go for the balls. And to demonstrate his willingness for the marriage of his daughter Juliet with Count Paris. Actually, that was a party where this Capulet people they were planning to proclaim or announce the marriage between their daughter Juliet as well as Count Paris. Okay, that was the intention of that ball party. And the lovesick Romeo, the son of this Montague, he attends the ball in a mask in pursuit of his beloved Rosalind. Actually, he didn't come there for Juliet. He was in search of another beloved, that is Rosalind. But he meets Juliet, and the two immediately fall in love. It was kind of a love at first sight. And then Juliet's cousin Tybalt recognizes Romeo. Okay, someone from the other family is here, entered here without our consent. Okay, this kind of things are there, and then has to be restrained from fighting them. So many confusion, so many fights, and all those things. And Romeo waits under Juliet's balcony to arrange a secret marriage with the help of the Friar Lawrence and Juliet's nurse, because they understood that it is not going to happen anyway. The marriage between them will not happen. So they are planning for a registered marriage. That is like kind of during that time, it was a secret marriage. So the friar of that particular place was in help for them. And also Juliet's nurse assistant, the maid, was also helping them. So with the help of these two people, they are planning to have a secret marriage. Then the marriage takes place and is immediately followed by a disaster, that is, someone else found it. And the disaster is like in a duel with the angry Tybalt. Tybalt, the cousin of Juliet. Okay, he is the one who first identified Romeo's entry into the ball party. And then now, again, this person is having some interferences. And then there is a conflict between these two people, and Romeo's friend Mercutio is fatally wounded by this person, and Romeo kills Tybalt. That is what happening. Okay, Romeo kills this person. Soon after the marriage between Romeo and Juliet, this particular episode is happening. And he got banished from Verona. He couldn't stay back because Tybalt is also from one of the reputed families in Verona, and Romeo killed this person. So he couldn't stay back there. He had to leave. He had to flee from that place. Then Romeo leaves for Mantua, having spent a single night with Juliet. And then Capulet decides that Juliet must marry Paris immediately, and Friar Lawrence advises Juliet to agree, because there is no other go. After all these kinds of issues, the father is thinking like, okay, I have to make my daughter married to this particular person as soon as possible. So the friar is saying like, okay, there is no other go. Now you have to accept it. Okay, otherwise it will be dangerous for your life, Romeo's life. So many things like that may happen. So you do like this person is saying like that. So he gives her a poison to drink before the wedding with Paris, which will make her dead for 42 hours. Nice, no? Yeah, this girl will be in a dead position for 42 hours. No one can wake her. But after 42 hours, she'll be like normal. Everything will be normal. So death for 42 hours. That is what the peculiarity of the poison. Then the friar would arrange for Romeo to meet her at the family vault when she wakes up. That is what his plan, because everyone will think like, okay, Juliet is dead, so they'll be doing something like that. And in between, he will arrange, the friar will inform Romeo to come and take Juliet, and they both can leave from the place. This is what their plan. But what happens, and you can see like this is written in 1595. So that was the time soon after the plague. So Shakespeare has used the period of plague for this, because as it is plagued on time, the friar's message fails to reach Romeo. Okay, friar sent a clear message to Romeo, explaining all these things, that I have given a poison to Juliet and she'll be dead for 42 hours, and in between you can come and take her. All these things were clearly written and sent, but due to this plague issues, it couldn't reach on time. So what happens? Hearing of Juliet's death, Romeo buys poison and he visits Capulet's vault and finds Paris there and kills him and drinks the poison. He's there and he sees like Paris is there. Paris is there to marry Juliet and all those things, and he's very sad. And he thought like, as Paris is there to marry Juliet, Juliet committed suicide. This is what Romeo thought. So he is thinking, or he thought that what Paris is the reason for Juliet's death, because it is just because of his marriage advancements that Juliet committed suicide. So he killed Paris, and he too doesn't want to continue with his life because there is no Juliet. Without Juliet, Romeo doesn't want to continue his life. So he already brought some poison, right? So he drank that poison and he dies. After this, what happens? The 42 hours completed, and Juliet now wakes and finds Romeo dead. So she is so desperate and she stabs herself with his dagger. There is a dagger dangling in the armor of Romeo, and she's taking that dagger and she stabs herself and she dies. So the events related by Friar Lawrence Server reconcile to the two families. So the friar finally says like it's just because of the rivalry between these two families that we lost the life of these much of people. Like Romeo dies, Juliet dies, Tybalt dies, Paris dies. So many people are dead by now. Okay, and some people are fatally wounded. Some people are like almost to die, something like that. So many things happened, and they lost ultimately Romeo and Juliet, the son and daughter of the two families. So the friar is saying like, what is the advantage of the rivalry that you are keeping? It's just give you some losses, that's it. So that kind of a reconciliation happens at the end of the play. So this can be categorized as a Roman tragedy by Shakespeare, an early tragedy by Shakespeare, okay, and this ancient tradition of tragic romance. All these things are possible. So that is what Romeo and Juliet. So yeah. Then comes English histories. Shakespeare has written history plays also. Okay, history plays, you know that the major genres of Shakespearean works are like comedies, tragedies, histories, romances. These are the four major categories that we used to say. And in between you have like early comedies, mature comedies, dark comedies, all these things, and tragedies, great tragedies, Roman tragedies, all these are there, but still, and history also, you have minor tetralogy, major tetralogy, all those things, and romances. Towards the end of his career, he had written some romances too. So when we divide it into like major parts, history is one of the important genre of Shakespeare. He has written almost 10 historical plays. We have to start with the history plays. I think it is better to start the history plays tomorrow because it is only just 5 minutes left. So we cannot definitely finish the histories of Shakespeare today. And I'll just give you some glances on the basic features of the history. Those are like, the histories are neither tragedy nor comedy. You can't categorize it as a tragedy, a pakka tragedy, or a pakka comedy. It's a combination of both. You can see both the elements, both the features in a history. And it is mostly based on Edward Hall's Chronicles and Raphael Holinshed's The Incomplete Chronicles of England, Scotland, and Ireland. Okay, actually, these are the two sources from which
Nam, are you speaking?